Hey guys, welcome back. So, how have you all been? Feels like a while since we've been here. It's only been a week, but it feels like long time no speak. It's been a while for me. My days blend together between being a mom and work and this, and then now my busy off days. It's like, woof, gosh, what am I doing? Where is the day going? So yeah, I've been doing some photo shoots. I had a tattoo consultation. Yeah, I feel very busy. Very, very busy. And no, I'm not going to tell you what my idea is, because then you're going to steal it. That's not very nice. You just wait until it's finished. Anyways, it's going to take a while to finish, honestly. It's huge, massive. But I can't help it. I'm an addict. At least it's a good addiction. I think it's a good addiction. But that's neither here nor there. Is there anything that y'all want me to cover? Any cases, any old cases, any new cases? I also heard that Annabelle, killed her handler, supposedly, allegedly. I was listening to it earlier on a different podcast, and I was like, oh, not Annabelle Strikes Back. But who knows, right? We'll wait and see. Maybe we'll cover it, because I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued. A camera, a command, a secret carved into skin. This isn't some underground dungeon in the shadows of a red light district. This was upstate New York, a wellness seminar, a leadership boot camp, with name tags and sashes. Behind closed doors, you weren't just promoted. You were branded, nude, held down, and told to say, "Master, please brand me. It would be an honor." The iron hissed, the skin sizzled. The smell? Unforgettable. This wasn't a horror movie. This was a women's empowerment group, run by a man. Welcome to NXIVM. Welcome to Glow in the Dark, the show where true crime meets dark glam, and we peel back the mask on the monsters hiding in plain sight. If you're new here, don't forget to follow the show on your favorite app, rate it, and share it with your friends. We're all about spreading the radiance, even in the dark. Today's episode, we're diving into NXIVM. Yes, NXIVM, because cults love to spell things wrong and call it genius. What started as a self-help program quickly evolved into a master-slave pyramid, complete with starvation diets, sleep deprivation, emotional breakdowns, and literal branding rituals. Yeah, guys, branding rituals. Ain't no way, ain't no how. Nope. You've probably heard the name NXIVM either on a true crime podcast or maybe splashed across headlines when a former TV star got arrested. But what you may not know is that NXIVM didn't look like a cult. It looked like a TED Talk, a wellness retreat, a life coaching program with cute fonts and branded notebooks. People called it empowering, a way to level up, a way to unlock your potential. But behind the curtain was coercion, a pyramid of obedience, and women who were physically branded and psychologically broken in the name of transformation. So, let's get ready. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Maybe you should go ahead and cancel that self-empowerment seminar. Yeah, go ahead. Maybe. Too soon? No, not too soon. Go ahead, cancel it. Cancel it now. Keith Rainier wasn't just your average scammer. And he definitely didn't show up looking like a monster. He looked more like that awkward middle-aged guy at the health food store who just won't stop talking about your aura. Yeah, that's Keith. He wore polo shirts, played volleyball, and he made women call him Vanguard. He was a prodigy scammer. But let's start at the beginning. In the 1990s, before NXIVM ever existed. Because this wasn't some Craigslist cult ad that said, "Hi, we brand women. Come on down." Before NXIVM, Keith already had a pyramid scheme, and it was called Consumers Byline, and it got shut down in the 90s after 25 states filed charges for deceptive business practices. He agreed to pay $40,000 and was banned from running a business in New York. And that's when he met Nancy Salzman, a nurse and a trained hypnotherapist with a background in neurolinguistic programming. She called him a genius. He called her perfect. And together, they formed a cult disguised as curriculum. They launched ESP, Executive Success Programs, a series of intensives designed to unlock your highest potential. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't religion. It was personal development with color-coded sashes. No, seriously. You wore sashes to indicate your rank. White, orange, yellow, like some kind of self-help karate kid. You bowed to Keith, who was now called Vanguard. And Nancy, she was called Prefect. Ugh. Because of course they were, right? It's giving Roman cosplay. What's with the names, guys? It started with a 5-day Executive Success Program intensive. You'd get invited by a friend or maybe a recruiter through a wellness group, yoga class, or entrepreneur event. They didn't tell you it was NXIVM. They told you it was a personal growth workshop, that you'd unlock your potential, that you'd learn how to lead, learn how to heal, how to win. The 5-day program cost anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, depending on the location and who invited you. And yes, people paid it willingly. Because it wasn't sold as a cult, it was sold as transformation. And the first few days, harmless. There were icebreakers, affirmations, and workshops. They gave you color-coded sashes. They told you how high-level the trainers were. There was journaling, paperwork, and lectures on emotional intelligence. Then came the real drills. They called them EMs, explorations of meaning. You'd sit across from a coach, and they'd start pulling apart your trauma like taffy. Why do you feel unworthy? What did your father teach you about love? Do you sabotage success because deep down you think you don't deserve it? It was part therapy, part interrogation. But the goal wasn't healing. It was destabilization. And who ran these sessions? Nancy, the co-founder, a trained hypnotherapist and master NLP manipulator. She wasn't just Keith's sidekick. She was the engineer of emotional rewiring. Not everyone made it past day 5, but that was the point. They were screening you. You just didn't know it. They were looking for specific traits: empathetic but approval-seeking, high-achieving or insecure, financially comfortable or well-connected, trauma history, especially parental abandonment, a strong need to belong or serve a greater purpose, the perfect cocktail for cult chemistry. If you ever cried in the EM sessions, they took note. If you overshared, you were vulnerable. If you questioned them, you weren't ready. But if you obeyed, if you smiled through the discomfort, if you asked how to go further, boom, you got the invite to the inner training path. That's when the indoctrination really began. You think you're climbing a ladder of self-mastery, but you're really just being prepped for branding irons and blackmail folders. Let's talk about the stripe path, because nothing says empowerment like earning different colored sashes and calling your friends coach, right? You start with the white sash, the lowest rank, entry level, fresh meat. It meant you were new, unproven, and still had everything to prove. You were full of hope and hungry to rise. Then came yellow, orange, green, blue, purple. Each color was supposed to represent a new level of personal evolution, like you were ascending spiritually. But in reality, each level meant more money, more time, more recruits, and blind devotion. The system didn't reward healing, it rewarded compliance. You got a little fabric stripe embroidered on your sash to show progress, because apparently, cults love badges. But seriously, what is this, Girl Scouts? But instead of earning your cookie badge, you've earned your way into starvation, surveillance, and eventually a brand on your hip? Yeah, no thin mints, just thin loyalty. And let's not forget, you were told Keith didn't even wear a sash because he had transcended all levels. Ugh, yeah, okay. So you're telling me this man created a cult, designed the ranks, placed himself above them all, and then said, "See, I'm the most humble one here." Yeah, classic narcissist cosplay. Oh, and to move up, you had to recruit. So now, you're not just being coached, you're selling the lie. You're building the pyramid, and every new color made you feel like you were becoming someone stronger. But in reality, it was just deeper branding, psychological, emotional, and eventually, literal. Here's where the transformation stopped feeling like empowerment and started looking like enslavement. Dos, Dominus obsequia sororium, Latin for master over slave women. And yes, that was the actual name. Dos was a secret subgroup within NXIVM, and it wasn't optional. You didn't just join. You were recruited and slowly indoctrinated. They pitched it as a badass women's sorority for high-level female leaders. They said it was about discipline, accountability, and growth. But really, it was a sex cult. Your coach became your master. You became a slave. You had to ask permission to eat, to sleep, to travel, to breathe without guilt. You were put on a 500-calorie-a-day diet because thinness equaled obedience. A hollow stomach meant full devotion. You were sleep-deprived, overworked, and texted constantly, not to check in, to prove your loyalty. If you didn't respond within 60 seconds, punished. Didn't call your master, punished. Disobeyed an order, even slightly, punished. And when I say punished, I'm not talking about losing phone privileges like a teenager. I'm talking about ice baths, standing still for hours, forced isolation, being ordered to run naked in place while being filmed, having your flaws screamed at you in front of the entire group. One woman was made to sleep on the floor for months. Another was told to wear a dog collar. Some were ordered to write fake confessions, like admitting to molesting a child, just so NXIVM could use it as collateral. Okay, so let me get this straight. You're wanting me to be submissive, get branded, and collect sashes like this is Girl Scouts meets Karate Kid, but the culty, almost demonic version? And there's still no snacks? Yeah, I'm out. I'll take my cookies to go. Thanks. To join Dose, you had to hand over collateral. And no, that's not a metaphor. This wasn't a pinky promise or a membership fee. This was blackmail material, handed directly to your master before you were even initiated. We're talking about nudes, sex tapes, letters falsely accusing your parents of abuse, confessions to crimes, real or fabricated, financial records, medical diagnosis, anything that could break you if it got out. They called it a tool for commitment, but it wasn't about trust. It was about control. You couldn't leave. You couldn't talk. You couldn't disobey. Because if you did, that collateral, your most private, fabricated, or humiliating truths, could be released publicly, strategically, cruelly. And here's the most devastating part. It worked. Women stayed. Not because they were stupid, not because they were weak, because fear and trauma are powerful chains. And Dose? They wrap those chains in shiny words like sisterhood, empowerment, and excellence. But make no mistake, this wasn't about growth. It was about breaking you, just enough to keep you obedient. And when you're already carrying shame like a secret, the last thing you want is to have it thrown into the light. They called it collateral, but what they really created was captivity. The final initiation was the brand. You were told it was symbolic, a sign of loyalty, an honor. You were blindfolded, stripped, laid on a table, while 4 other women held you down. But before the pain came, you were told to say it out loud. Master, please brand me. It would be an honor. That wasn't a choice. That was submission, rehearsed. And then someone, usually Dr. Danielle Roberts, cauterized your skin with a surgical pin, right above the pelvis. No anesthetic. And the shape? Not a star or a flame or some sacred goddess ruin, but KR, Keith Rainier's initials, disguised to look abstract, but absolutely deliberate. And you know what Keith said? He said it was their idea. Sure, Keith. Just like hell was a wellness retreat. And it wasn't just women policing women. DOS had male enforcers. High-ranking men at NXIVM knew exactly what was going on, and they helped keep it all in place, monitoring text chains, enforcing silence, and reporting noncompliance. These women were told it was empowering to be obedient, that real strength meant surrender. All while these men pulled strings behind the scenes. They were never branded and never starved. It was never about women rising. It was about Keith hiding behind women he destroyed. Abuse wasn't called abuse. It was called challenge. Starvation was discipline. Branding was transformation. They didn't just control bodies. They reprogrammed language. They hijacked the meaning of pain and called it growth. Okay, so let's talk about the woman who made it all sound good. Nancy Salzman, co-founder of NXIVM, certified hypnotherapist, expert in neuro-linguistic programming, and a master manipulator. This woman wasn't just winging it. She was clinically trained. She had a background in psychotherapy, behavioral conditioning, and subconscious reprogramming. She knew how to break a person down, not just emotionally, but neurologically. Nancy didn't heal trauma. She harvested it. She used NLP to distort perception, and hypnosis to confuse boundaries, and psychological techniques to crack people wide open and then inject obedience where their will used to be. NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming. It's a psychological method that claims to rewire how you think, feel, and behave by using specific language patterns, visualizations, and behavior modeling. It's often marketed as a personal development tool, but in the wrong hands, it's mind control dressed as self-help. And Nancy? She used NLP to trigger trauma responses, reframe abuse as growth, and make women feel like disobedience was a personal failure, and create an emotional dependency on their master. It wasn't healing, it was psychological warfare. And she was a woman. She knew what it meant to be violated, controlled, erased, and she still helped Keith do it to others, under the illusion of therapy. Like, seriously, what the fuck happened to being a girl's girl, Nancy? Seriously, you're out here hypnotizing victims into starvation and obedience? You didn't empower women. You helped dismantle them. It wasn't just unknown women being recruited. NXIVM had celebrity flybys. Actresses like Kristen Crook and Grace Park took courses. They weren't in DOS, but their faces were used in marketing. They gave NXIVM credibility, glamour, and legitimacy. But the real face of DOS was Allison Mack. Yes, that Allison Mack. Chloe from Smallville. The teen tech whiz sidekick who once helped Superman save lives was now branding women. She wasn't just texting new recruits. She was enforcing 500-calorie starvation plans, calling branding empowerment, telling women it was an honor to suffer, an honor to obey. She didn't just fall for Keith. She fused her identity to him. From teen superhero sidekick to head recruiter for a sex cult? Truly, girl, what happened? She didn't just support Keith. She believed in him. She called him the most brilliant man she'd ever met. She said it wasn't his looks, it was his mind. And when she finally stood in court, she admitted that she was devoted, that she thought she was helping, that she thought she was doing it all for the greater good. She apologized, but the damage was already done. And what did Keith love more than control? Volleyball. Every night. And I mean every single night, Keith played volleyball at a rented gym until 2 a.m. Forget the board meetings or candlelit dinners. This man ran a sex cult by day and lived out his varsity fantasies by night. This wasn't just a game. It was a ritual. Women were expected to attend, dress nice, sit on bleachers, and watch silently, like disciples in pews. He didn't want cheerleaders. He wanted worshipers. This man controlled a sex cult with branding irons, and his side hustle was midnight bump set spike? Okay, so we've got a cult leader with a god complex, and his sacred temple was a YMCA volleyball court? Okay, Keith. If you missed a game, you were punished, demoted, frozen out, and labeled disloyal. Because this wasn't about sport, it was about obedience. It wasn't a hobby, it was a loyalty test. It was dominance in gym shorts. It wasn't just a sport, it was his church. So, what did a typical day look like in NXIVM for a woman in dose? Let's break it down. Morning. Wake up to text from your master. Submit your weight. Report what you ate, which was usually nothing, and apologize if the scale didn't drop. You weren't just being monitored. You were trained to disappear, pound by pound, boundary by boundary. Midday. Complete EMs. Exploration of meaning sessions. Publicly confess your limiting beliefs, and maybe recruit someone so you can earn your way down the striped path. EMs weren't healing. They were a psychological teardown, a performance of shame disguised as growth. Evening. Prepare a task for your master, maybe a seductive photo, and get assigned your next act of obedience. Dose ran acts of submission. The more extreme, the more you proved you were worthy. Night. Watch Keith play volleyball. Cry. Repeat. It was like the Devil Wears Prada, but make it 500 calories and a felony. This wasn't empowerment. It was exhaustion rebranded as devotion. It was obedience wrapped in TED Talk buzzwords. And if you tried to leave, your collateral was waiting, locked, loaded, ready to ruin you. For many, the ultimate horror was being chosen to sleep with Keith. And honestly, I don't blame them. Just saying that line makes me go, ugh, ugh. I don't like it. I do not like it. Anyways, I couldn't help it, sorry. This wasn't a reward. No shit. Sorry. Let's keep going, guys. Let's keep going. This wasn't a reward. It was a command. Dose members were told it was an honor, proof that they descended spiritually and emotionally. Some of them were virgins. Some were deeply traumatized. All of them were manipulated. They were told to call it love, told to call him Vanguard, and to act grateful. But what it was rape, over and over again. And he used that power to keep them terrified, even when they thought they were rising through the ranks. Because the higher you climbed, the more he owned you. And at the top of that twisted pyramid wasn't leadership. It was access. Being chosen to sleep with Keith was for him the highest honor in Dose, a sexual promotion masked as empowerment. Some were told it meant they were spiritually evolved. Others were starved, praised, and guilted until they gave in. It wasn't intimacy. It was control, cloaked in doctrine. Branded bodies became his currency, and the more obedient you were, the closer you got to his bed. Keith once said, "Most geniuses are misunderstood. I'm like Einstein." Sir, Einstein gave us the theory of relativity. You gave us calorie quotas and blackmail folders. Okay, so let's pivot for a minute. NXIVM didn't stop at women. They built a system for children. Yes, for children. It was called the Rainbow Cultural Garden, and it was marketed as a revolutionary early childhood program. But what it actually was? A multilingual cult daycare. Oof. Say that 3 times fast. You know what? Say it 5 times fast. I don't know how I even said it once. Keith's idea? Raise global citizens by teaching 7 languages simultaneously. Each hour, a different language. Each hour, a new nanny. No stable caregivers, no licensed educators, no emotional bonding. Just ideological chaos disguised as brilliance. I mean, I had flashcards and lots of homework, and I barely passed French. And these babies, expected to master Arabic, Mandarin, French, and Spanish before they could even spell cereal? This wasn't education. This was psychological fragmentation. And who helped push it globally? Emilio Salinas, son of Carlos Salinas de Gortari, former president of Mexico. With Emilio's influence, NXIVM expanded the Rainbow program into Mexico City, Los Angeles, London, and Guatemala. And these kids? They weren't raised by their mothers. They were raised by handlers. Because in Keith's world, control started early. Let's stay in Mexico for a second, because this wasn't a side hustle. This was NXIVM's elite empire. With Emilio at the helm, NXIVM opened full-blown training centers in Mexico City and Monterrey. They courted the political class. They recruited actresses. They built an entire brand of NXIVM in Spanish. It was like Tony Robbins meets telenovela, with a splash of Handmaid's Tale. And yes, Hispanic women were branded too, funneled into DOS just like in the States. Keith didn't just want to dominate one country. He wanted global devotion. She wasn't just any member. Kristen Keefe was Keith's partner and the mother of his only known child, and for years, his closest confidant. She saw it all, up close. The drills, the collateral, the cult logic dressed up as empowerment. At first, she stayed. She believed. Or at least, she wanted to. But when DOS started forming, when women were being branded, when she saw the youngest, most loyal followers being reduced to obedience experiments, something broke. Kristen didn't just walk away. She planned her escape like a prisoner behind enemy lines. A burner phone, a borrowed car, her son strapped in the back seat, and evidence, hidden, encrypted, and prepared. She didn't go straight to the FBI. She started with the state authorities, and when they didn't move fast enough, she took it higher. She gave the FBI everything: where Keith was hiding, who the inner circle enforcers were, and what collateral really meant, and what those brands were really made of. She didn't wait for justice. She became it. Because sometimes, the first one out isn't the one who escapes. It's the one who opens the gate. Another woman caught in the storm? India Oxenberg, daughter of actress Catherine Oxenberg. India was branded, starved, and isolated. And Catherine? She refused to look away. She didn't just call the police. She called the press, the FBI, and every door she could knock on. And when India finally got out, she didn't just survive. She told the world. Because sometimes, saving one person means tearing down the entire system. India was pulled deep into DOS, branded, controlled, emotionally cut off. But her mother, Catherine, she didn't go silent. She scorched the earth, not just as a mother, not just as a voice, but as a damn rescue mission in heels. March 2018, the FBI moves in. This wasn't a fluke or a slow bleed. This was surgical. Multiple cities, simultaneous raids. Albany, New York, NXIVM's mothership. Los Angeles, satellite coaching hub. Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, Keith's beachfront hideaway. Yes, Keith was living it up in a luxury villa, not hiding in a bunker, not sleeping with one eye open. He was surrounded by 5 women, all loyal, all still calling him master. And when they cuffed him, he didn't scream. He didn't run. He didn't even flinch. He watched, like a narcissist watching someone else's dream crumble. Because in his mind, he'd already won. By 2019, Keith was back on U.S. soil and headed straight for federal court. The charges? Sex trafficking, conspiracy, forced labor, and RICO violations. Yes, the same law they use for mob bosses. This wasn't some spiritual misunderstanding. This was organized abuse. Over 15 women took the stand. They described being starved, branded, and being ordered to have sex as an act of growth, and being blackmailed with nude photos and family secrets. One survivor said being branded felt like being burned alive while everyone watched. Another said she was told exactly what to weigh, who to talk to, when to eat, and how to act. She wasn't allowed to think for herself, not to even blink out of rhythm, because everything belonged to Keith. No cameras were allowed in court. But the transcripts? They read like psychological horror. Imagine being in a courtroom so quiet you can hear the pen stop moving. That's the moment you realize this wasn't just a cult. It was a machine, programmed for obedience, engineered for control, and designed to erase the women it consumed. And when it came time for closing arguments, the prosecutors didn't flinch. They looked the jury in the eye and said, "This was not a self-help group. This was not about women's empowerment. This was a pyramid of abuse designed by Keith Raniere, built to benefit Keith Raniere, and executed for Keith Raniere." They painted him as a predator who cloaked control in the language of healing, who sold obedience as strength, submission as empowerment, and trauma as growth. The jury didn't take long. After weeks of testimony, mountains of evidence, and stories that scorched the air, they found him guilty on all counts. And just like that, the cult wasn't just exposed, it was dismantled. Before we get into the sentencing, let's talk about one name that doesn't scream cult recruit: Claire Bronfman. She wasn't some brainwashed 20-something looking for a purpose. She was the heiress to the Seagram's liquor fortune. Billionaire, equestrian. I'm talking old money untouchable. And while survivors were rationing calories and handing over nudes, Claire was writing checks. She didn't just support NXIVM, she bankrolled it. She poured over $100 million into Keith's empire, funding lawsuits, surveillance, and a legal war chest to silence anyone who got too close. So yeah, when the house of cards finally collapsed, she didn't just lose her money, she lost her legacy. So, what did justice look like? Let's break it down. Keith Raniere, 120 years in federal prison. Allison Mack, 3 years. Nancy Salzman, 3.5 years. Claire Bronfman, 6 years and 9 months. Lauren Salzman, daughter of Nancy, she flipped, testified against Keith, and cried in court as she admitted her role. Her sentence? Probation for cooperating. Now listen, I know we're supposed to say justice was served, but some of these sentences, they barely qualify as a slap. Nancy weaponized therapy. She rewired people's identities and got less time than you'd get for tax fraud. Lauren flipped, cried a little bit, and then walked out on probation. And Claire? She funded the whole machine. Lawsuits, spies, smear campaigns, and she'll be out in what? Under 7 years? That's not justice. That's generational wealth buying a softer landing. And yet, it's still more than most cults ever get. Because this time, there were courtrooms, there were consequences. And the victims? Some removed their brands, others kept them. Not as a scar, but as a warning. Oh, and let's not forget, at sentencing, Claire actually said, "I will forever be proud of what we built." Proud? Of the trauma circus? Of the master-slave hierarchy? Of calling someone master while surviving on almonds and trauma drills? Claire, sweetie, you funded a sex cult, not a summer camp. This isn't something you crochet on a throw pillow. And now, I want to ask you something. After everything you've heard tonight, do you think you would have fallen for it? Because let's be real, We all have things we nitpick about ourselves. We all carry trauma. And who doesn't want to be better, right? But let's take it a step further. What if it wasn't a cult? What if it was a yoga studio, a business coach, a women's circle, a leadership retreat with vision boards and TED Talk energy? Would you have noticed? Or would you have smiled and handed over your secrets and called it empowerment? Now that you know what was really going on behind the sashes and the seminars, would you have walked out? Or would you have stayed just long enough to get branded? Let me know. Message me. Because this one gets under your skin. So what was NXIVM? A cult? A crime ring? A well-dressed descent into obedience? It promised growth and delivered subjection. It sold leadership and delivered abuse. It offered healing and branded pain. And those who survived? They didn't just walk away. They testified. They tore it down. They lit the match. Because sometimes, to destroy the lie, you have to burn the temple down. The scar wasn't the wound. The scar was the proof that they survived what tried to own them. Until next time, stay radiant, even in the dark.